Now, I first noticed you in the Golden Harvest films. Now, you competed in tournaments, kick martial arts, and all that before you got in the movies. Am I correct?
Yes, correct. But not to a huge degree. And the reason for that when I started martial arts, well, I started judo when I was 11 years of age, so that's 1961. There was virtually not much else around. Then I started karate in the mid-60s under Tino Severano, who was a Hawaiian-Filipino martial artist who basically introduced Goju Ryu into Australia, or Goju Kai, as he called it. And so for a lot of my early career, there weren't. In fact, Tino hosted the very first Australian karate championships, and I entered that as a kid and came fourth, and that was really it. But it wasn't like now where there are tournaments on every week in every sort of form. They were very few and far between, just because the arts were still being established as such, at least here in Australia.
Now, when you were doing those, did you? Now, catch me if I'm wrong. What was your first actual? Were you? Let me start over. Did you? Was the plan to transition into acting, or did that just something that kind of someone saw you and you kind of fell into it, kind of like what happened with Don the Dragon Wilson?
Yes, no, that's absolutely the latter is what happened, and of course that person being Chuck Norris that spawned my acting career. No, I had no intentions of being an actor. I was a martial artist. I still feel that my number one through line in life is being a martial artist and just being the most involved and being the best martial artist that I can be, And so I look, we'd have to go back a bit, which I've talked about a lot. When I started at Goju, I was with Tina Soberano, and I then left in 1970 with a friend of mine, Bob Jones, who was 10 years older than I. He wanted to start his own system, which was based in Goju. So we started that in 1970, and style was eventually called Zendo Kai. And as a result of my connections with Bob had already been working as a bodyguard and handling security for a lot of pubs and clubs around Melbourne in the late 60s, in that era. So when I hooked up with Bob and became partners with him in Zendo Kai, I started earlier when I was still with Tino. I just remember that I'd already started working doors at some clubs and nightclubs, and I always laugh when I say, well, there were discos back then, but that really dates me. But I started working at clubs, and so I was involved in the security industry. Now, as a result, we had a call in 1972, 73 from Paul Dainty, who was an Australian entrepreneur who used to bring a lot of the world-class bands out to Australia. So he rang Bob and wanted to know if we would do personal bodyguard work and security work for the Rolling Stones. And so that was my intro into that world. Bob and I were, I was looking after Mick Jagger and a few of them and training him a little bit on the road, which is another story. So I started work as a personal bodyguard in the early 70s. That led on to a lot of work with all the different bands that Paul Dainty would bring out, like Joe Cocker, Fleetwood Mac, Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, David Bowie. I worked with all of them. So cut to 1978, Linda Ronstadt came out to Australia, and I worked with her and became very good friends. She then wanted me to come to California and work full-time for her as a bodyguard. And by the way, bodyguard is always, we could talk about my definition of that, but part of what I used to do was also work them out every day and keep them fit and teach them a bit of martial arts, and so there's a bit of a side benefit to having me around. But so I was umming and ahhing about going out to California, and I had clubs here, I was teaching, I had girlfriend here, all that sort of stuff, and I thought, well, no, I don't really want to go. But I ended up, Linda said to me, look, why don't you try it? You can always go back home. And that was kind of the catalyst to make me think, you know what, why not? get out of my comfort zone and make the trip. So off I went to California. And again, a little side note, in 78, Bob Jones had gone to the States and ended up arranging for Chuck Norris to come out to Australia and do some demonstrations at some tournaments we were holding. And the tournaments were basically the introduction of kickboxing into Australia. And I was doing demonstrations on the same card I was demonstrating. Well, we just got on amazingly well and became very close friends in a short space of time, traveling to the different states here, which led here in Australia down under to get an opportunity or an invitation from such a world-class celebrity martial artist as Chuck. That was very... Ended up going in 79 and started. And the first person I called was Chuck. And I ended up going and training with Chuck every morning at his house. He used to live in Rolling Hills Estates, which was a little further south from Los Angeles Airport. And we were training every morning. Because Chuck knew I could handle Japanese weapons and everything, he was in pre-production or early pre-mode for The Octagon, which was, of course, one of his earlier movies that really American one to sort of feature ninja and all that sort of stuff. And he wanted me to play his nemesis in the movie, which was the character Kyo. And as you know, with Kyo, I ended up wearing a mask and having my face blacked out because technically I was supposed to be Asian. So anyway, that was my intro into the movie. It really just happened that a matter of being a martial artist, training with Chuck being in pre-production, realizing he had the skill set that he wanted. So I ended up spending, weeks with Aaron Norris, who's Chuck's brother, and Chuck, and that we figured out all the fights in Chuck's backyard and worked out the fights for Kyo and Chuck and all the different ninjas. So again, hence my introduction to the world of film. And I remember being on the set of Octagon and meeting Philip and Simon Rhee, who were quite legendary in the Taekwondo, Korean martial arts field. Mm-hmm. There was a whole bunch of martial artists, Tadashi Yamashita, and I thought, how good is this? I'm meeting these amazing people, and I'm getting paid for it, and I'm actually still doing what I like doing most, and being a martial artist. So that was a very long-winded way of saying, no, I didn't aspire to do it. It just kind of happened, a matter of circumstance, and I thank Chuck for that introduction.
Don the Dragon said the same, that Chuck was instrumental, so instrumental. A lot of people have said that. So normally I ask this toward the end, but I'll ask this now. And then I'll share my opinion at the end. Chuck Norris,
okay,
in a ring, one-on-one fight in his prime. Could Chuck have beaten Bruce Lee?
Oh yeah, you just want to drag me into that little.
Oh, I just okay. I'll tell you first. My opinion: Chuck could take him, and I like Bruce Lee's movies better than Chuck. I'll admit that. I think Chuck could have taken him.
And based on what?
Well, as much as I like Bruce Lee, all I know about Bruce Lee is some YouTube videos and his movies. Now, Bruce Lee always adapted. Now, where I come from, and by no means do I put myself in any line of you or Bruce Lee, anyone like that. Always adapting means you always practice something different, which means you can never perfect what you're doing. My opinion. Chuck Norris was also a world's champion martial artist who competed and beat the best in the world. Bruce Lee may have been that, but he did not compete. So I have to bet on the guy that's beaten hundreds of guys that we know about. No disrespect to anyone involved. Right. I just base it on the fact one competed, one didn't. I have to put my money on the guy who has a track record.
Well, Chuck always said in answer to that question that he was a professional fighter and Bruce wasn't, so he's kind of falling in line with your reasoning there. Look, let's face it, one thing we do know is that Bruce was an amazing martial artist, as was Chuck in a entirely different way. Who knows? Who knows? When it gets down to the real aspect and the mindset that you need in actual competition, definitely Chuck had the upper hand as far as that goes. I mean, I know there's lots of stories about Bruce and being in street fights and street gangs. I don't know that is actual, and I don't know against who. So it's such a hard thing to even sort of contemplate. I mean, I'm dear friends with Chuck and have the utmost respect. So I'm along with you. I believe that would probably be the outcome in my mind. Now, I already know people listening will be up in arms about that reasoning. Don't really care because it's all hypothetical anyway. Nobody will ever know.
No.
It's a bit like saying, could Muhammad Ali have beaten, Rocky Marciano? You can theorize about it, but nobody will ever know until you got the actual two men in the ring. The different mindsets, the different skill sets under pressure. It's all theory. It's all just opinions. So, as you can tell, I'm not going to dig myself into too deep a hole right now, Corey, even though you're trying to get me in there.
Oh, no, not I have way too much respect for you for that. Don't worry about that. Now, you kind of hooked up, I noticed, pretty early on with Samo. And a little known fact that even people that read my stuff, listen to my stuff, don't know. When I was young, not young, but still in my 20s, I had gotten a horrible blood disease that ballooned me up really big. Not insulting Samo, but Samo was kind of my inspiration at the time. Like, because I've been doing martial arts, and it was like, well, here's a big guy. I could move like Samo, which I can. And I noticed you kind of hooked up with him when you were very young, and you were in a lot of the Dragon movies with him, Yun Baiyu and Chan, and then even the ones that Samo did by himself, like Shanghai Express. Was he one of the very first? Were him, Chan, and Biao one of the first group that you worked with when you went over there to Hong Kong for Golden Harvest?
Oh, totally. No, absolutely. Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars was a film, and I mean, they made a couple of those, but that was my very first foray into Hong Kong movies, and it actually came about because Pat Johnson was an ex kind of partner in karate schools with Chuck, and Chuck and Pat ended up working on Rumble in the Bronx,
one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, and I did a lot of training with Pat, and he suggested that I would be good for one of Jackie's movies, and he was going to suggest that to Jackie. So I remember being in Japan, in some place outside Fukuoka, which is sort of out near, I believe it's near Osaka. Don't hold me to that. And couldn't even remember, but I remember being in my hotel room, and I was on tour with Linda Ronstadt, doing the bodyguard work, and I get a phone call, and this voice says, Richard, this is such and such. I work with Jackie Chan. He wants you to work with him in a movie. What's your price? That's pretty much how it went. I went, whoa, what? Jackie wants you to work with him in a movie. What's your price? I said, well, hold on, before we even go there, when does he want me? And they said, you need to be here in 3 days. And I said, look, well, thank you. Not even worth discussing price because I'm on tour and I'm obligated to this role for another couple of months. So I said I have to pass. So then whatever amount of time later, I ended up getting another call from Jackie's people. And they offered up, me going to Hong Kong to work, and I didn't know who Samo was, to be honest. It's not like I was one of these people who looked at all and knew all the Hong Kong movies, pre their exposure into the US. So I agreed to go, and it as I said, it came from saying no the first time just because I couldn't, and then off I go. And of course, that was my intro into the world of Hong Kong action movies. Samo, of course, being the director and one of the stars, and Jackie being in it, and Yun Bill. So you've got all the brothers for people that know. You have little brother and big brother. Samo being big brother to Samo to Jackie, and probably one of the few people that Samo that Jackie. God, I'm getting all mixed up myself. Samo being one of the few people that Jackie would actually bow down to in that sense, and the respect they have and the pecking order that they have in the Chinese sort of society. So I'm on a set with these guys, and that was the start of it with Samo directing. And tell you, I mean, what an amazing experience for a number of reasons. That when I'm on the plane, I'm heading over to Hong Kong, having no understanding of what I'm getting into. And I'm thinking, I'll be able to do a bit of this and some of the other stuff I like to do. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong, because I get there and the one thing you learn is they have no interest in what you do. It's really what they want you to do in the way of choreography and techniques and everything else. And it was an eye-opener from that point of view, and quite stressful. When I started fighting Samo, I remember 3 days into the first fight I did with Samo in Twinkle, I remember thinking, I said out aloud in this hotel room in middle of Hong Kong there, I said, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. Because we were working 18-hour days, 7 days a week when I started fighting Samo. It took 3.5 weeks to do that fight that I do with him inside that kind of restaurant or bar area.
That is my 10-year-old son's favorite fight in movies.
Yeah, well, it was amazing, and but the timing was different, the cadence is different. I mean, everybody knows they have their own particular style, and which God, hats off to them. But you can imagine, as somebody that's done a few American movies, to go into that arena, it was so different, and it took getting used to. And the actual person that settled me down and made me why I ended up getting a lot of work in Hong Kong was Shoji Kurata. Kurata was just such a gentleman. He's a Japanese actor who'd done like 40 movies in Hong Kong, and I ended up fighting him as well in Millionaire's Express. But anyway, Kurata could see me getting, Shoji Kurata-san was see me getting quite frustrated. And he pulled me aside and basically said, look, Richard, just a little bit of advice. If you want to do movies here, he said, basically, a little zip across the mouth. He says, don't say anything. They don't care what you want to do. And he was being nice, but it was funny that he said they think they're God's gift to martial arts. And that's pretty much what the choreography is going to what they tell you. So just do it as many times as they ask you to do it. And don't sort of, again, try and stress what you want to do. And so I took that advice. And, what people don't know about the movies back then, you would do 20, 30, even 40 takes on a small sequence in order to get it to the standard that someone like Samo or Jackie wanted. So it was grueling. But I just shut my mouth and I'd do it. The other thing is I was always in really, really good shape, and the contact, especially the body, was almost full body contact with side kicks, with punches. I'd even caught bare-fisted uppercut under the chin about 30 times from Samo. I'd have to put my face in front of the lens and he'd smack me under the chin. And I found a little bit of cotton wool to put in my teeth because I didn't want to chip my teeth. And he wanted to see my face kind of contorting in slow motion with a bare-fisted uppercut to the chin. But that was the way it went, and I was fine with that because I trained hard. And I remember jokingly saying to Samo, that's okay, as long as I can hit you back just as hard. And he amazed me because that guy is one of the toughest guys I know. He's the most incredible action director I've ever worked with, and his ability to perform some of this fight stuff is just second to none, especially, as you pointed out earlier, considering his build and the way he looks. Jackie made a comment to me, which here would sound like a put-down, but to them was total praise. He said, Samo looks like an elephant, but moves like a monkey. And that was, really probably Samo's ability. And it's true because I just couldn't believe how well Samo moved. There's a scene in that fight where I swing a chair at Samo's feet. He's up on a table. And he basically, when we started, he said, okay, I'm going to do flip off here and twist, and I land on my feet. And I'm literally looking around looking for the stunt double, thinking there's no way this guy's going to do that. And he probably did that 20 plus times straight. And I went, wow, and I just got such respect for him. And nicely the opposite too. He had incredible respect for me because he knew I wouldn't complain with getting hit. I would do it as many times as I wanted. I would take the bumps. And more importantly for both Samo and Jackie is, for whatever reasons, I had the timing that worked for them. You'll often hear Jackie talk about that. He says, I get so many martial artists, whether Americans or whatever, they all want to show me how tough they are. He said, it's not about how good they are trying to kick or punch, although that's part of it. He said, it's timing. Our timing is so particular as to whether it'll work for their style of choreography. And it's not like I trained to get that timing, don't get me wrong. It just happened as a result of whatever my previous years of training. It just gave me the timing that worked for them. And that was a crucial part of what made it all work. So Samo just really befriended me, took me into editing, even though we only got a couple of hours sleep a night. He'd take me in and show me a quick edit. Jackie took me shopping all over Hong Kong for cameras and showing me what stores not to go to and everything. So they just really liked me. And so I just established a really good rapport and friendship and trust more than ever. They also knew that I had good control, that is, albeit as long as it was all pretty rough, it's still choreography. You don't want to be smacking your leads like Jackie or whatever in the face. So that was a big part of it. So it just established a trust, which resulted in a lot more work for me over there.
Now I could tell in the movies, especially, and I felt so bad for Cynthia Rothrock in Millionaires Express, the beating she had to take. I could tell that you guys were doing full contact, padded up a little bit, but still full contact. When Samo gave you that one crack, did he break your nose for real, or was that a little bit of makeup?
Well, no, he didn't break my nose. You mean in the uppercut thing, or where
because you had the little bit of blood that came out, and I was like, all this is like a 20-year question for me. It's like, did Samo really just break his nose?
No, he didn't. Mind you, it could have been very easily done because there were so many injuries on those sets just because of the extreme contact. But no, he didn't. I'd almost be surprised if that happened with him because I'm telling you again, the guy's amazing. His timing, his power. By the way, I mean that guy Samo with a spinning back kick is as good as anybody, and you think that's the last thing he can do well. But so powerful, and you can tell even when you do a fight scene with somebody in a movie, you get a sense of whether somebody has skill or power or all of that. Some people are very good at just kind of being fast and following movement, but I could tell Samo absolutely knew how to punch, and I totally respect his ability as a fighter, not just as a martial artist. But again, he didn't break my nose, though. Of course, I had plenty of knocks and bruises, no question about that. That side kick, when he kicks me up against the wall, he started like a football field the way it seemed and ran at me, and oof, I felt like one of those little shrimp or squid in the water, in a squirt ink, and all the legs flow behind. And that's how my arms and legs look like as I was bouncing off that wall. And the thing about that is, again, people that watch the film, they see the one take. They don't see the 30-plus takes of every little move that you have to go through to get whatever satisfies Jackie's eye or Samo's eye. So it's an experience. But again, it was a great relationship I had, and it was just mutual respect. That's what it's about. Because I keep saying again, Jackie particularly was tired of and I say Americans, that's not fair, Europeans or guilos, coming in and thinking they have to show Jackie how tough they are. And he'd already been doing movies for so many years. He said, I'm so over that, which is why you'll see a lot of us guilos being doubled. Because I said to Samo once, and Jackie said, look, I've got better timing than your guys. Why are you doubling me in these different areas? And it's usually when you're back on. And they said, it's a lot of it's a trusting. I didn't get doubled a lot, but a lot did. And they said they just know their guys and their guys know them, and they're not going to make the same mistakes as somebody that's not used to that style of choreography, if that makes sense. And the second reason, by the way, is monetary. Back then, the stunt teams were really on a monthly retainer, a very small monthly retainer. There's no overtime, there's no stunt adjustments, there's none of that. The only time their stunt guys would make real money as if they doubled a Westerner, one of us. So that was also the impetus to put them in wherever they could.
Now, after.
But by the way, I must say this is another story. But when we did Mr. Nice Guy, which Samo directed, and that was shot here in Australia, I did have my nose busted in the middle of the shoot, but not due to them. That was due to a friend of mine who was a kickboxer, and he wanted me to teach him a bit of grappling. And I said, "Oh, Happy," I said, I'm a bit careful about doing stuff like this in the middle of a shoot because your responsibility is not to get injured. If you are going to get injured, it may as well be in front of camera." I remember we lay on the ground. He talked me into it, and he was wanting to do a thing called the guard pass, and he brought his knee up totally accidentally, smacked me in the nose and broke my nose, and all this blood came up around my eye, and I had to go to the next day to the set. And luckily, or not luckily, but they're so used to those sorts of injuries over there that Samo was, he's not happy, but they just packed a bit of makeup around my eye and turned my head away from camera. But in that shoot, I did actually. So Samo was there directing, but it wasn't anything to do with him.
I will, because I did have a Mr. Nice Guy question. I'll just ask it to you now. I was very curious because I was very excited when you got, and I wasn't. I love Jackie's Hong Kong films. American movies, I get why you have to change it for an American audience. I didn't play to that audience, but I was super excited when that one came out because you were going to be the villain in it. But you guys didn't have one of those big elaborate fight scenes. Is there? Were you injured at the time? Was there a reason for it?
No, time and money. That's really what I believe is the thing. Because, see, when you're in Hong Kong, Jackie knew that he could shoot 2 months, 6 months, 2 years. There's no real restrictions. He's the boss. But when he was doing an American movie, in this case shot in Australia, you can't do that because we have unions, we have overtime, and it costs an incredible amount of money. Well, we already went, I think, a couple of months over schedule. And it got to the stage where the producers just said, "That's it. You've got to finish. You've got X amount of days left where you have to shut the movie down." So, that little fight, and I hear you. I said to Sam, I said, "Why are you using me if there's no big fight scene? I don't see the point." And that was really it because, when they tied me, in the house, I get tied up with the elastic band, which is a little bit of a comedic sort of scene. I understand that, I'm supposed to be the Giancarlo, this weird sort of mafioso dude, and I'm supposed to be a prick, and you're supposed to then long to see this final battle between Jackie and myself. And I'm totally on board with that criticism of that movie. To not have a big fight in the end seemed a total waste, but it was really they just ran out of time. They ran out of money. In fact, when you see me actually get killed, I get hit with that mining truck. Mm-hmm. When they're looking down, I'm not even there. They'd already wrapped me, So, so that's really the reason. It wasn't planned that way. It just happened that way. That they just didn't have time to do a big fight because, as you know, they're already a couple of months over. To do a big fight with Jackie would have had an incredible amount of time because he's so meticulous with the amount of time he would have spent on a fight like that.
Now, when you did one of my favorite martial arts films is Millionaire's Express. Here in the States, I believe it was released as Shanghai Express. I'm not sure.
Correct.
Was that your first? Because I know that was one of Samo. That was one of the first things I saw with Samo without Yoon or Jackie when he was kind of more on his own. Was that your first film with Cynthia Rothrock?
Yes, it was. I first heard about Cynthia when I was in Hong Kong, shooting Twinkles, and I heard talk of a blonde, blue-eyed American girl that was shooting in Hong Kong. We didn't actually get to meet at that stage, but yes, then we both got cast in Millionaire's Express, which, a certain amount was shot in Thailand, and of course some of it in Hong Kong. But yes, that was the first time I'd actually worked with Cynthia.
I felt so horrible for her in that movie with her fight with Samo because You could tell she had if you really if like because I like pay like really weird attention to martial arts films, and it was like, okay, she's padded, but he's really beating the shit out of her. I feel so bad for this woman. And then I saw her in Above the Law with Ewan, and it was like, oh well, I don't feel bad for her anymore because she clearly could kick the crap out of anybody.
Uh, uh, yeah, look, and again, she would have known that also, having already worked in Hong Kong, not with Samos so much, but anyone who works there would know if you're going to say yes to a role, it's going to be a fight movie, and there's going to be excessive contact. End of story. So I don't feel sorry for anybody that cops it, in the sense that you kind of know what you're getting into. Now I didn't the first one, but it didn't take me long to realize that, okay, this is what this is all about. And when I signed on for other movies, I knew I had to be in the best shape I could be, and that was going to be the nature of the fights. And so, they're okay with padding up. A lot of the times, unfortunately, you're wearing a wardrobe that don't allow you to hide pads and everything, in which case you know, and, Cynthia's fight, she had a double doing a certain amount of stuff in that fight. That's just part of the course. But overall, if you're blocking kicks and doing all that sort of stuff, he's going to be throwing as hard as he can, and you just got to block accordingly. It's just part of being in that genre.
Now, when she transitioned over to America, and I saw her in, which basically where I live, China O'Brien, you could watch that 8 times a day on cable. I mean, it was highly played, and I was like, "Oh, cool! Richard Norton's in this film." Were you? And I noticed at the time too, you would still also do Hong Kong films, but did she bring you in for that film specifically to play her friend, the firefighter?
No, no, all of that was due to Bob Klaus and Fred Weintraub, because Bob Klaus and Freddie Weintraub, for those that know, and if not, Bob Klaus directed Enter the Dragon, and Freddie Weintraub produced it for Warner Brothers. Now, my first movie was with them before I went to Hong Kong, and that was in Force 5. And Force 5 was a movie that featured Master Bong Soo-han, who, rest his soul, has passed away. But Benny Urquidez was in it, and Keith Vitale, Joe Corley. A lot of iconic American martial artists ended up being in Force 5, and I was one of the leads in that film. And again, that came from Pat Johnson, I must say, who recommended I audition for one of the roles in Force 5.
You were that was the one with, was that the one with Jim? Was that the remake of Jim Kelly's film, the Hot Potato film?
No, I don't believe so. I don't know. I don't believe it was a remake. It's possible, Corey. I'm not sure, but I remember though going, and we're getting off the track here a little bit, but I remember going and auditioning for Force 5, and I'd been training with Chuck every morning, going to train Fumio Demura at Orange County, training with Benny Urquidez. And I remember going out to audition. There must have been 200 of the best martial artists in America auditioning. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I said, what am I doing here? I'm up against some of the best martial arts in America. I've got a funny accent that people say they can't understand. And here I am. But as it turned out, it was down to the final 10. I remember being in that final 10 and having an amazing change in attitude, where I suddenly went, instead of saying, why me, I said, why not me? Why shouldn't I get this role? I must have the skills that they need if I'm in the final 10. And that was the big change in sort of the way I viewed my career and my abilities and my chances of making it in the industry, because I ended up being cast in one of the leads with some of the best martial artists around. So off I went. So that's how I established a relationship with Bob Klaus and Fred, who, of course, produced and directed China O'Brien. So they were the ones that thought I would be perfect to play that role. And, of course, having already, done some work with Cynthia, knowing Cynthia, it was a natural fit. See, Cynthia and I just got on well. I think we complemented each other. she's amazingly good on camera, you know, with placement of technique, because she was, you know, world forms champion. So she had all the abilities required for that sort of movie. And when we did it, you know, we actually got a write-up, I remember, which is pretty cute. The one writer said we were like the Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire of martial art movies. And so we did China O'Brien 2. As you know, we ended up doing Rage and Honor 1 and 2. And I think we did 8 or 9 movies in the end run together. In fact, you know what? I'm wondering if I see it so long ago, and age, my grey matter's depleting, Corey, I must tell you. But, you know, I did a film with Cynthia and George Chung. George Chung, who was a boyfriend at the time, was also just an unbelievable martial artist and world films champion. They ran a school together in San Francisco, and he produced a movie. And Leo Fong was also in it, who some of the martial arts people will know. So I ended up doing a role as a bad guy in that movie.
Was that Lady Dragon?
No, not Lady Dragon. That was another one we did in Indonesia. Lady Dragon was different. This was before that. It was a very low-budget movie that we shot around San Francisco. And I'm trying to think of what it's even called. But I'm sorry, I'd have to look up the IMDb, because I don't remember whether that movie was before China O'Brien or after. I'm not sure. But
Fight to Win?
We had a big...
Was it
Sorry?
Fight to Win, the one Leo Fong made?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
That sounds... Do you know what year that was? So anyway,
that
it doesn't matter.
86, 87 sounds about right to me.
Well, then that's after I did the Chinese movies and everything. So could be. Look, you know, the thing why it's hard to remember. First of all, I hardly ever get to look at all those movies I did. I just, for some reason, I never had interest in going back. It was a fun journey, and I must have done like 60 movies, you know, in the Philippines, Thailand, Hong Kong, and all over. And at this stage, a lot of them sort of merged together as far as what became before what, you know.
Is it true you were in, and I've heard you were a stuntman, I've heard you were in it, and it's one of my favorite films. I've never noticed you. Were you involved in the canon film American Ninja?
Yes, I was. I was actually Michael Dudikoff's. I was Michael Dudikoff's fight double in that one.
Okay.
So I went over. I got Tadashi Yamashita that role. I suggested to the producers that Tadashi would be amazing to play the role of the Black Ninja. That happened. Then Tadashi and I ended up choreographing a certain amount of stuff. Of course, Mike Stone was the stunt coordinator on that one. Mike Stone, to those who wouldn't necessarily know, was a legendary martial artist just a little bit after Chuck Norris's time. And he was the fight coordinator. And again, I went over and I was hired, yes, to double Michael Dudikoff. So I did a lot of his fight scenes, especially the ones with Yamashita Sensei on that particular film. And I played a guard in one little tiny spot. But my main role, again, was helping put the fights together and do that along with Mike Stone. And also, there's some other good martial artists in that. And that was actually quite a fun shoot.
Because you moved around a lot, didn't you? Like Hong Kong films, American films. You were even in License to Kill, correct? The James Bond film?
No.
Oh, I thought you were in that one. I'm sorry.
No, but I think I probably did a movie that was still called License to Kill, but unfortunately nothing to do with the actual James Bond. You know, in those days, a lot of the movies that I did, even in the Philippines, you know, they would plagiarize whatever is a popular theme. It's like when I did Equalizer 2000, that was a post-apocalyptic film that was very much based in a Mad Max world, you know. And,
I have that poster somewhere in my house.
Yeah, well, that was great. That was with Sirio Santiago and a Roger Corman film. And, you know, a lot of things, what would happen then is whatever became a popular movie, the smaller production companies would immediately write a script very similar, shoot it in a hurry and get it out there, either at the same time or slightly before the major movie was to be released. In other words, I'd just piggyback off that kind of success, you know. of a particular theme, whether it's kickboxing movies, Vietnam type movies, all of that. That was the way it all went.
You worked with Don the Dragon in a couple films, didn't you? I know Cybertracker for a fact. Did you
Yep.
work with him in any other films?
Again, you're straining my
That's
memory
all I
bank
can
here,
place.
Corey.
I'm sorry.
I'd have to look it up. I would have to look it up. I may have. No, I did. Let me think. Cyber Tracker. I remember. I'm probably surely did another one. I know I did one with Roddy Piper and
Billy Blanks. I have a question about that one. Yes.
Billy Blanks. Yeah, yeah. Worked in that. That was great. It was fun working with Roddy. Was a real fan of Roddy Piper.
Why? I guess I'll ask you now. Tough and Deadly was the film. One of the my favorite action films of the of the straight to '90s kind of era there. Once again,
Yep.
why didn't you and Billy have the big 20-minute fight toward the end? It was kind of like like where'd Richard Norton go?
Yeah. Who knows? Look. Who knows? This might sound a little strange, but I know it existed, and this is not to say that it would have been the case, but a lot of people that were breaking in, because I'd been in the business quite a bit before some of those actors or martial artists wanting to become actors, and to be honest with you, they don't necessarily want somebody with more experience being in it and maybe turning out to even look a little bit better. I'm not saying that would have been the case because Billy was an amazing martial artist and all of that, but there's not a lot of interest in highlighting somebody that's already been in the industry quite a while. Does that make sense? I know it sounds like I'm
No,
counting my own horn, and I'm not meant to do that, but there's a certain interest in keeping the fact that they're the lead or the star, keeping that the main focal point and not having somebody come in and be an equal or as good as them.
see now, I had this discussion when I interviewed Don the Dragon. I'm 46, so for probably 35 years of my life, and still currently, I've studied martial arts. When I was a big fan
Mm-hmm.
of all these films, specifically in the '90s, late '80s, early '90s, I wanted to watch Richard Norton, Don the Dragon, Billy Blanks. I wanted to watch real martial artists in films do martial arts. That's what I wanted to see. I did not, nothing against other films. I didn't want to see a big screen movie where someone who didn't know martial arts was doing martial arts. I would rather see a martial artist have these long fights. So anytime I would see a film with you or any of these other people and the fight was short, I personally would always feel cheated, to be honest with you. If I see
Yeah, but
Richard
Corey,
Norton
you're
in a
also
movie, I want to see Richard Norton in a movie.
yeah, but you're also from a fan base that loves the Hong Kong movies. The one thing that's different about Hong Kong movie action films is the fights are sometimes 20 minutes long. That's probably an exaggeration. I mean, when I did Twinkle Twinkle, Samo, one of the friends with him, he said to me one day, he said, "Oh, Richard, I need to ask you, why don't my movies sell in America?" I said, "Well, Samo, where do you want to start?" I said, "You've got fights that are almost of an unbelievable length, with wires and people flipping all over the place. You don't have a script or a story particularly because they would write it as they go." And I said, it's you can have people doing amazing feats in a fight, but in America, if you don't give them the license to be able to do that stuff, i.e. make them like a mutant or a superhero or something, as soon as American audiences, and I'm talking back then, would look at them, as soon as they would go, "Oh, that's bullshit, nobody could do that," you've kind of lost them. So it was a very different kind of audience in America to Hong Kong. You, as a lot of people, would appreciate the athleticism, the martial arts ability and expertise of the people in the Hong Kong movies like Ian Bill or Samo or whatever, and Jackie, for the sake of just that, whereas there's not that same appreciation in America. And one of the other big reasons is, as I said earlier, if Hunter is an example. When I did the fight scene with Jackie in City Hunter, now that was a long movie. Fight time on screen was maybe 8 minutes, which is huge in length, but it still took 6.5 weeks to shoot that fight. Well, you would
Wow.
never get that in America. I used to shoot whole movies in 4 weeks, the whole bloody movie, not a fight. So there wasn't the amount of time or budget or kind of focus put on spending that much time on a fight. They had the illusion that to have a little more drama and talking heads was what was needed, which I think was totally wrong. I think anyone wanting to watch me back then is certainly not going to want to watch me act, or Cynthia or Don. I think they would tune in as you did to see us fight. But we're not the producers, you know. Unless you're producing and you control it and write the script, unfortunately, you kind of do what you're told to do. But it was just a whole different emphasis on Western movies, which is why you didn't see those long fight scenes, because they believed that it wouldn't be as palatable to an American audience. And yet, again, I would say that I believe there was a tremendous amount of audience in the States that would have loved to see longer, more intricate, and more elaborate fight scenes.
One of the nicest men I've ever spoken to in my life. I'm pretty sure you've worked with him. I can't think of anything on the top of my head. Is Mateus Hughes. And he would tell me,
Yeah.
oh, when Jalal Merhai would make these films and stuff like that, just how amazing it was, and the camaraderie and the time you guys had making them. What an era it was. And as a fan, I love those things so much. I have such fond memories. Do you think that can ever be recaptured today? Films like made like that?
No. And the reason being, you're absolutely right with what Matthias was saying. I still say today, I have just the best memories of my films in the Philippines and Thailand and Hong Kong, mainly because they weren't big budgets and everybody would just kick in and do whatever it took to make the movie the best it could be. And, you know, whether it's moving lights or sweeping a set or being involved in choreography or whatever it took, you were just like a big team because you knew you had 2 and 6 months to spend on the movie. You know, I have a saying that even today that unfortunately, especially with the bigger movies, where your name appears on the call sheet often dictates how you're treated. So if you're an extra, I mean, God help you, you know, on these bigger movies, you're almost isolated. You can't talk to the actors. You can't make eye contact, all this stupid shit. When really everybody's just there to put the best end result on screen, right? And that's what I miss about those movies is it was just, you know, everybody knew if you did a Corman film like some of the ones I did, that if you had $5, it wouldn't matter how good it was going, or even if you needed half a day extra, you were not going to get that half a day extra. You were no way you'd get $5.10. That was just known. So you did everything to just make sure by wrap day everything was in the can and the way you went. The problem now is also the marketplace. See, when you're talking about Joel Murphy and Goldhuffs and all, a lot of those uh, production companies just don't exist anymore because we made movies that went straight to the video market or they went straight to the DVD market, and this was mum and pop video stores, you know, in your local neighborhood. Now everything's online and streaming. The budgets are far greater. There's just not a marketplace for those very low budget action films that we did back then. So I think you either get a film that's made for nothing, it's terrible, or you're going to have to spend, you know, $100 million and have A-listers in it. It's just a different world. I just don't think movie making is the same. And the other thing that's changed a lot of the experience with movies now is the advances in technology, computer software that you can actually edit, do special effects, do CGI, do green screen, everything, and do it at home on your home computer, you know. So the hands-on old school style of filmmaking has changed so much, you know, that so much can be cheated now, and that's just changed the whole experience of filmmaking.
And see, like, I personally hate that. And here's like not a not. Now, how did you feel? I'm trying to think to say this without mentioning any names. You are well-rounded, accomplished uh, martial artist. You know, the highest respect in the world for your martial arts skills. What was it like to you to
Thank you.
see, here I am, I could beat the shit out of 50 guys at once, and I'm in the Philippines making a movie, and here's someone who took some steroids, allegedly, doesn't know any martial arts, and they're making $30 million movie for Universal Studios. Did things like that ever upset like you personally, or were you just happy to be doing what you were doing?
No, look, I was happy to do what I was doing, because I'm realistic to know movies are about money. Money's about star power. It's about having an actor of note and everything that, for whatever reasons, has certain recognition with an audience. So they're the ones they're going to put in there. The feeling. See, the old days, I never had a stunt double. Back then, we just did it all. Nowadays, they would much rather have an actor in an action role and double him or her than have an action person in a dramatic role, if that makes sense. And that's not to say, by the way, there are some action people that are very, very good actors, but the emphasis is really on the dramatic ability of an actor, knowing that with the technology they have, they can do face replacement. The way they can insert a double in there and everything is almost seamless, so they don't have to worry about that. Plus, it's a lot cheaper to. But you know what I'm getting? At the end result is probably they would think a better dramatic performance, knowing that you have an amazing stunt person, martial artist, who can kind of double that actor and sort of round off that aspect of the film. See, this is where, and I think things are changing a little bit in the sense that Mad Max is probably a terrific example of absolutely getting back to old school filmmaking. Now, yes, there was a CGI in that and all that sort of stuff, but having worked as fight coordinator on Mad Max, the last one, I know that every stunt you see was a real stunt person putting their lives on the line, and risking life or death with a lot of those stunts. So that's very old school, whereas a lot of the films, that it's been reliant on CGI and special effects and everything, as opposed to the human element, action ability of the person performing. And I've got to say that, you look at Bruce Lee, and a lot of what's great about Bruce's films is there would often be a wide shot of Bruce doing the stuff. You saw where the kick started, you saw where it ended. Of course, there would be inserts and everything like that, but you were just looking at an amazing person performing his art on film without getting shaky camera and getting in so tight that you can't tell what the fuck is going on. And that was all started because you would often have actors doing a fight that had no idea what they were doing, so they had to cover it up with smoke or nighttime or a lighting or whatever. So yes, in the sense, I'm of the school of, if you have somebody with amazing physical ability, let's feature that. Let's have them do 90-95% of it. Let's not put a stunt double in there. And let's have something that's very visual and very real and what we would term old school. And I think there's a big push to getting back to that. And I'll give you an example. The film I just finished, Suicide Squad, with James Gunn. It warms my heart to train someone like Margot Robbie. As a little Aussie, that helps. But oh my God, how talented is that lady? She's just so committed to being the best she can be. She's virtually twice as good as a stunt double. I believe I could teach her virtually any fight scene you could think of. There are exceptions when there's wires in it, but even the wire stuff, she was fearless and flawless at executing it. To me, that's old school. You'll see fights in Suicide Squad that's just her. 95% of the fight stuff is her as that actress, who's an amazing actress, who's also amazing at executing her action. So that's fantastic. And there's people out there who can do that, and there's a lot that can't. There's a lot of actors that are action stars that got 2 left feet, so you have to double them. But they still would rather have that person if they have far more name value or credibility in the marketplace as far as getting bums on seats, which is what it's all about.
Because I myself or I should say myself, I can't speak for you. I personally am a comic collector, and I'm a very big fan of the comic book films. Is there anything you can kind of tell us about, like the plot or anything of Suicide Squad 2, or is that still kind of under wraps?
No, I could tell you, but I'd have to go and cut my wrists.
Okay, we're good there then. Margot, okay.
Yeah, no, but look, you know yourself. I mean, one of the big things, even on Suicide Squad, if a cell phone was even seen in sight, you could be fired because there's so many websites that are trying to guess who's playing what role, what's going to happen, all that sort of stuff. And it's important, you know, that you keep the plot and the characters and the storylines completely under wraps. So we're all signed confidentiality, you know, contracts and everything else. So we'd get into big trouble if we did expose any of it. So yeah, unfortunately, the only thing I will say is that I've been around a long time. I think it's going to be an amazing movie, and I say that because I generally don't like to even predict how a movie I've worked in is going to turn out because I usually have no idea. There's so many variables that will determine whether the movie's good or bad, whether it's studio execs, editors, whatever it is, post-production getting involved, that can change your perception of the end result. And look at how many mega million-dollar movies come out and still get it wrong, even though they've got access to the best directors, writers, and everything else. So it's hard to predict. I do say that having watched some of the performances in this, like Idris Elba, what an amazing actor, also amazing physically. You know, he loves kickboxing and all of that. Margot Robbie is. John Cena is incredible in this.
Oh, he's in that. That's right. I did read that. Sorry.
Oh, just 1 sec for me, Corey. Hold on.
Sure.
Just 1 second, mate. 2 seconds.
Sure.
Like okay. John Cena, you know, it's interesting. You look at John Cena. A movie with Jackie Chan a year ago, or a year and a half ago, that's coming out. And as a result, even though he started a little bit before, he decided he wanted to teach himself Mandarin. So he now speaks fluent Mandarin. He's a professional level piano player. Taught himself to play the piano. When he's not on set, he's playing the piano in his trailer. He's also, believe it or not, got a platinum award-winning rap album now.
Yes, my wife has it. My wife has it. She is a huge
think about that. And his comedic ability is fantastic. And so, again, I'm just touting Suicide Squad with some of the performances and some of the, you know, of course it's going to be out off the wall kind of quirkiness, which is very James Gunn if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yes.
That's there, but at the same time, there's incredible dramatic performances that just bring tears to your eyes. And so there's a wonderful mix, you know, and wonderful action in there. It's really going to have something for everybody. So I'm incredibly excited about that movie.
I love Margot Robbie. I have no shame in admitting she is one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood. We just went and saw Birds of Prey. She's so good in it. It's almost like she was born to play this role.
Yeah, she's all right, Corey. She's not much to look at, mate.
Well, yeah. She's no Cynthia Rothrock. I remember now. I can tell you this.
I'm kidding.
I can say this over
the big thing about Margot, the best. Sorry, I'm talking.
No, go ahead.
Really, the most attractive thing about Margot is it's like she's not even kind of aware of how beautiful she is. You know, she's so unassuming. If you go out or meet her out somewhere, she's so incredibly down to earth and approachable, which is just it's so alluring to get somebody like that that's not even aware that they're just one of the most beautiful people on the planet, you know. But as a person, everything else. So you've got an incredible mixed bag of greatness there in someone like Margot.
I used to work with the young lady in the 90s. You may find this funny. I feel safe to say it because I'm on a phone and you can't beat me up. And she was like, much like me, really into she was she loved Don the Dragon and she loved you. You were like her two heartthrobs. And I loved Cynthia Rothrock. No shame in admitting it. And she'd be like, oh, did you see China O'Brien 2 with that gorgeous Richard Norton and all that? I was like, and I loved Cynthia so much. I was like, oh, that guy, I'm going to hit him with so many rights. He's going to beg me for a left when I'm done with him and all that. So I just think it's amazing, though, that like, and I think that's, and as weird as it sounds like, and I've kind of always said this to my son, like when you are a martial artist, like, and my whole family does martial arts, and the camaraderie you have at the dojo and the family that you almost form, that's another thing that I really always liked, all kidding aside, about the films you would do back then, is it was so many of the same people. It was like, this is almost, it's a film, but it's almost like a dojo atmosphere. This is almost like a family these people have created, and you could feel that through the films, and I think that's another reason I love them so much.
Yeah, no, and it's something I very much miss. You know, like I keep saying, Cynthia and I were just such close friends, and you know, I know I'm going to dob you in now. You were asking me before we came online about, oh, well, we thought you were boyfriend and girlfriend. Well, a lot of people naturally assume that. You know, as I said to you, that's a touch of death in the entertainment industry, is to sort of have it off with one of your co-stars. So that never happened, albeit there was, of course, a lot of attraction with with her to me and me to her. So that was definitely there. But that also helps do what you're talking about, bring about a certain chemistry on camera, because China O'Brien was supposed to be love interests, so you would hope to God that you at least liked each other. But you're one of many. I mean, there's so many. Even there's so many people that just still drool over Cynthia. She's had an amazing allure for so many people for so long.
I still drool over. I watched the martial arts kid that not that long ago. She's still gorgeous.
See, that's the sick part, Corey. You just like a strong woman who can maybe just smack the absolute daylights out of you.
Well, plus
There's something to be addressed.
I've always been jealous because my weakest part of martial arts is always my form, and she just glides, Because, and see, like I said, I think that's the other thing. Like, I wanted to be, when I was younger, the only thing stopped me was talent, but I wanted to be a kickboxer, and I had said this, so I noticed Dawn's footwork. I would notice your kicks. I would notice her form or the way she uses the hook swords. I always kind of, it sounds really stupid, but when I would watch these films, I of course watched them for entertainment, but I was also watching them like maybe I could pick something up from them and use that. It was, I watched them on like three different levels, if that makes any kind of sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, and I get with Cynthia, part of the attraction, because you're a martial artist, is knowing that she's actually that skilled. That's an incredibly attractive element to her, aside from the fact that she's gorgeous to look at. So, yeah, I get it.
Her and what was her name? She was in the Mission of is it Karen Shepard? Was she the other like real big female martial artist back then? I get some of the names mixed up. I'm old.
Yes, no, Karen Shepard was also a champion martial artist doing movies, yes.
Now, I have a question for you, if you don't mind me asking. When because you kind of had that nice transition. You had all these films. Now you're doing the behind the scenes in the big films. When you were here in the States, of course, two of the biggest names in martial arts were Jean Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. One I have a ton of respect for, one I don't. That's, I won't, not gonna put you on the spot with nothing. Have you ever had the chance to work with either of them?
Yes, I know Jean Claude. When I was training with Chuck back in the very early 80s, Chuck would show me letters that Jean Claude would send him, with Jean Claude asking Chuck to help him get into the American movie industry. Chuck was very instrumental in that. Chuck working, of course, with Canon Pictures at that time. And he ended up getting Jean Claude a role in one of those early, like, movies, kind of war-based movies. Um, So, and I did meet Jean-Claude a few times, not a lot. And again, a very, very talented martial artist. Of course, the rest is history with what he did with his career. So yes, I was well aware and know Jean-Claude. I also met Steven Seagal, believe it or not, when again I was on tour in Japan with, it was either James Taylor or Linda Ronstadt, but Steven apparently knew a couple of the musicians in Linda or James's backup band, whichever tour it was. And so I was with Bob Jones, my partner here in Zendakai, and we ended up meeting through them. Steven took us to some sumo training. He wanted to show us a few things, and this is before he'd even come back to the U.S., and established himself. So I met him, and it was funny because Steven used to say back then, "Oh, I can't even think like an American anymore. I'm more Japanese and all this." Of course, a year or so later, he was opening up a school in Burbank in the Valley, and the history, of course, started training one of the, I think it was Michael Ovitz or one of them. And I believe there was a bet with the agents that one agent saying to the other that he could create a star out of complete unknown, and that was Steven. I don't know how true that is, but there you go. So, yes, I do know both of them.
Those were two of the more, with the exception of Chuck, those were the other two, from my era, big U.S., big budget stars. I always kind of put Jeff Speakman up there, but he really, he was the inspiration for why I studied Kempo, but he only really had the one big theatrical film. What,
Yeah, it's surprising with him because I think he had everything going for him to have a huge career. Though I believe he's still kind of producing movies, but yeah, you don't see him out there other than Perfect Weapon, which I thought was fantastic. So, but, who knows? The industry's so quirky, as to who makes it and who doesn't.
Well, what I think kind of hurt him was Here We See, because that was one of the first times, at least, big budget theatrical films, you saw Kempo highlighted. And then he does the follow-up Street Night where he's just shooting people. He does like 3 other films, and he's just essentially just a standard run-of-the-mill, one-line shooting action film. It's like, well, no, we want to see the Kempo. That's what we want to see. I think that, my opinion, what may have hurt him.
Yeah, no, very possible. Very possible. It's the old thing. It's like Stallone. Stallone, I think, is, when you see him in the last, boxing movie, he's a good actor, but he established himself with Rambo and all that sort of stuff, and that's what you get kind of known for, and nobody's interested in seeing you do comedy or anything else, regardless of whether you're good at it or not. So I think you get someone like, you're featuring Jeff Speakman. Stick to what you do best. Stick to your strengths. Use that as a vehicle to highlight any dramatic abilities you might have, because you may have a lot. But you just got to be realistic. It's interesting. I've just known a lot of people that start with maybe a bit of an action film, and suddenly they see themselves purely as dramatic actors, and I'm like, well, no, you're not. And even if you were, you realize that the level that you're now competing with, it's like, good luck with that.
Well, it was kind of like for Seagal, because, I like Aikido. Aikido's really, not my particular style that I wanted to learn, but it was like, wow, this guy knows Aikido. This is really good. And then Under Siege, which hit so big for him, is like, where's the Aikido? He's shooting everyone and blowing things up. I don't like this movie, but once again, I fall into more of that category, like you said earlier. I want like The Raid. It's the only modern film I can really think of. I want 80 minutes of my 90-minute movie being fights. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I'm sort of what a lot of action people like. I agree. The first, movies that Steven did were great. Why they were great for us was nobody really seen Aikido techniques put on camera, on film. So it was different to see a guy with his hands by his side and flipping guys all around the place. But unfortunately, audiences are very fickle, so it doesn't take long before people go, okay, I've seen you do that, even though it's still amazingly well executed, they want to see something different. So that's always the struggle. This is why people like Jackie are so amazing, and Samo is their ability to kind of morph with the times. They realize that Jackie said to me, he said, I have to learn Western boxing and I have to do things different from the early Kung Fu movies I did because audiences get bored, and that's exactly what happens. Unfortunately, for a lot of those people you're talking about, the only other action they can do is to shoot people as opposed to expanding their martial arts ability and being able to execute that on screen. Like someone like Donnie Yen, you know, doing stuff that makes him look like a Wing Chun master, and they're incredible that way. That's what's given. Karate Kid was another one. Look at Jackie's acting ability in that, for goodness sakes. And there's no real Kung Fu as such, so God, kudos for them for realizing how to extend their careers to the extent they have. It's quite incredible.
Oh, Sammo
I mean,
was...
and it's like what I'm doing with Suicide Squad. You know, the big thing with going into, you know, I finished Triple Frontier before that, and then Ghost in the Shell. And usually the one big message is, oh, we want something different. To which I say, well, there is nothing different. I think just about every martial art move possible has already been done on screen. So it then has to get down to story and character, you know, to make it actually work, because it's all been done. So it's very hard to come, you know, to be completely out of the box when it comes to action anymore.
Now, I might have... I get confused because I watched them kind of in a row, and I can't remember if it was two or three. What did you think of, if you saw it, what did you think of Sammo's fight in It? I think it was Ip Man 3. I might be wrong. Maybe it was 2. I think it was 2 the more I think about it. How did you think he did in that? Somebody who's kind of, you know, gone through so many years with him.
You know what? I'm going to embarrassingly admit that I haven't seen it.
Oh.
So,
All right, I'm gonna, after this interview, I'm gonna need your address so I can send you a copy.
Yeah, no, I would love to have a look. What did you think of it? Is it good, or you're thinking not so good?
You know, amazing. And I say he's older than me. No disrespect to him, but I'm Catholic. I swear to Christ. Anytime I trained last night, and if I think I can't do something, because I'm built like him now, and I really think, well, Sammo can do this. Damn it, I can't. He really and truly is my inspiration. And a lot of times, if I can't pull off a combo, I have lately been really thinking about, and I know it's a film, he might have had one take, but damn, he was so good in Ip Man. Just, you know, to keep up with Donnie Yen is an accomplishment in itself.
It doesn't surprise me, though, Corey. It just doesn't surprise me. Sammo, he's amazing. He's amazing with what he does and still doing. Well, they both are. Like Jackie, there's never a day they're not working. For God's sake, it's crazy the workload they put on themselves and the amount of product they're still putting out there. I mean, you know, most stars in America would do one a year or maybe or whatever. They never stop, which is I couldn't do it. Wouldn't want to do it, but they're just incredible. Their ability.
Your filmography is incredible. You've got so many. I mean, it's like, oh my, and I pride myself in watching all these martial arts films. How many films would you say you've done? You're well over 50.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's close to 70, but I really don't know. It's also been a long time since I've looked at that, but it's been a lot. I mean, some smaller movies, some a lot I wouldn't want to see again, let alone anybody else. But the fact is, I did them, and I have no regrets because, as we talked about earlier, just what an incredible way to spend your life, being in different countries on movie sets with other martial artists. You're like a kid in a sandpit, you know. It's just an amazing opportunity. So I often said that I know I could have probably been a better actor and also got bigger roles in better movies, but I was also, my acting teacher once said, Richard, you're too eager to say yes. You have to say no sometimes. But for me, martial arts was all I really wanted to do, and doing movies was a way of making enough money to spend more time in the dojo. So it wasn't my number one passion. So I was like, oh, this is a gig. You're going to give me $10? Yeah, I'll go. And I did that, whereas if I was as passionate about acting as I was about martial arts, then I would have been spending as much time in acting classes as I was in martial art classes. But I was very realistic that it wasn't my passion, and I wasn't going to sort of create stress on myself focusing on that aspect. And I got to say, I keep saying I have no regrets, because my whole drive was just to begin to be the best martial artist I could be. Everything good in my life has come as a result of that. 20 plus years on the road with people like David Bowie and the Rolling Stones and James Taylor, Fleetwood Mac, and then 60, 70 movies with people like Jackie and Samo and Chuck, all as a result of just trying to keep myself online as a martial artist. Well, that's fantastic. How could you argue that? Most people, I believe, are getting up each day doing jobs that they probably hate, 9 to 5. Why? Because they have to. And all they're looking for is when they get to be 60, 65 and they can retire with their superannuation or Social Security, and then they're going to start to live. And I go, well, that's all very well if you happen to make it, That's a big ask. So, and I'm not saying it's their fault at all. When I went from school, I went straight into the immigration department here in Australia. I was interviewing people wanting to come out to Australia, and I was training every morning and lunchtime at night and teaching martial arts. And I left when I went to the States, left that, so I understand what a 9 to 5 existence is like. But when I look back and think that I dared to participate, as I said, I dared to step out of my comfort zone of having a secure 9 to 5 job, saving up for my retirement, rather than just saying, "Fuck it, I'm going to quit, and I'm going to head off on my own to the US." Well, in retrospect, what an amazing decision I made, and that's what's giving me such an amazing life. I have no regrets. A lot of the moves are only low budget because of what we talked about, the sense of family, the friends I made. I was in Lithuania for 6 months of the year for 4 years, working as second unit director and stunt coordinator on the New Adventures of Robin Hood, which Freddie Weintraub produced, and it was a kind of a weird Warner Brothers production. But we were there 6 months of the year, and I'm in the forests with horses and getting off horses in the middle of fight scenes and picking blueberries. And I remember once thinking, how many people would get to do this, for God's sakes? And I'm getting paid for it, and I'm doing my martial arts. So, I've had a blessed sort of existence as far as that goes.
Now, here's a couple random questions, more so martial arts questions. My 2 favorite weapons, and I know about 8 now, I think, are staff and screama. What would be your favorite weapon to use of choice?
Still, Sai. Sai was still my favorite. But I remember when Sal Ebenez, who was a training partner that Tina Severano brought out when he opened up the Goju schools here, and Sal introduced me to the idea of Sai, and I was intrigued with it. I think one of the main reasons I was intrigued is we were taught that weapons were an extension of your empty hand technique.
Yes.
That you really didn't get into weapons until you were quite proficient with your own body, let alone putting something in your hands.
Same here.
And at that stage, at certain stage, everybody was playing with nunchaku because of Bruce Lee, and it almost became a bit of a kind of a gimmick, a bit of a toy, obviously not in the right hands. And I just thought Sai was not something I could carry around with me. There's no real practical use outside of in the dojo and just using it as an extension of my physical ability. And I just got to really love it. I had another friend who spent some time in Indonesia and taught me quite a lot of different techniques with the Sai. They call it cabang in Indonesia, which basically means branch or twig, due to the pitchfork-like look of it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he taught stuff, and I added that to my repertoire, and I just loved it because for me it was just a totally personal expression of my martial arts. I could be by myself playing around with the Sai, doing a kata with it or whatever, and I enjoyed it, but again, purely for almost meditative reasons as opposed to the practical application of the weapon. The other weapon I really like is like you with the bow. I really like the bow. I like to use the rattan, which has a little more flex in it, rather than, say, the white oak or whatever the Japanese bow would often be made of. But they're my favorite. I wish I had spent time with a screamer and a lot of the arts as per Danny Inosanto. That would have been amazing. I didn't get into it, and I regret that because I think their knife work, Carly, screamer work, and everything is fantastic, and the principles in those forms would be fantastic for anybody wanting to be in movies and do action scenes in movies. That's for sure.
My son, I have a rattan bow. He has one of the new, like a titanium one, and there'll be a lot of times I'll do drills.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do the drills with him where I do the eskrima sticks, against his bow, and he's gotten really good with it. But he's of the younger generation. They like those titanium staffs because when they spin them around over the head and everything, it makes the little whistle. It looks a lot neater.
Yeah, I actually spent, at Chuck's, I taught at Chuck Norris's convention again this year and last year, sorry. That was amazing again. But I saw, they have competitions for kata and forms and everything, and of course the tricking and that bow stuff. Amazing to watch. Still, for me, bless my heart, I see absolutely no purpose for it in any form of combat because it's about the weight of a toothpick. I don't see the relevance as far as a combat extension, but I absolutely appreciate the dexterity and the ability it gives these younger kids to sort of play with their bodies and the reflexive nature of using that stuff. For me, that's almost like a gymnastics kind of floor routine, a lot of that stuff, flips and everything. But I used to say that to Cynthia when she'd go down into the splits and be flipping her wrists around while she's in a full split. I'd say, for fuck's sake, what's that got to do with anything? You would never do that in a fight or anything else. The same argument could be said, though, of a certain amount of Japanese kata, I guess, to people that don't know that the relevance of a lot of the movement is not necessarily applicable to today's combat world. It might have been back then, but certainly not today. But that's a whole other conversation, reality-based, as opposed to traditional martial arts.
Yeah, I think the very first time that before he was able to learn it in school and he wanted to learn the nunchucks and I was showing him what to do, he was like, well when do I start spinning it? And I was like, I don't know. I kind of learned that from watching movies. I was like, when I learned it, we just used it as a club and the chain was what you went for the eyes with. I was like, the tricks I know, I just learned from, imitating things in movies. I was like, I don't think any teacher's ever going to show you that.
No, look at Bruce Lee. I mean, Enter the Dragon and nunchuck stuff he did. Yes, he flipped it around, but that was purely a little show piece, and then it was all about just single, very fast and very dynamic hits. There was no flipping it all around the place. So I thought that was a very valuable demonstration of the use of something like a nunchaku, in an actual fight. Because you go, yeah, I could see that actually working. You know what I mean? So that was very real for me. But I just don't see that in a lot of the tricking that's done today. But once again, I understand it's a different arena, and anything that gets the kids interested in being physical, improving their reflexes, timing, and everything else, and being involved somewhat in the martial arts, that's always a good thing.
Now I've got 2 questions left because I've already
Okay.
because I'm a moron and don't know my time frame. I've already started this late and I've taken up a bunch of your time, and
Yeah, I already went to bed, had a nap, and it came back out, Corey. So we're picking it up from there.
And this is, I mean, I words can't express how huge a fan I am of this. So I've been smiling this entire time. This is a great honor for me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What, you can tell the difference once again between the films you did, big budget films, as a martial artist who you're still in amazing shape. What are your thoughts on anabolic steroids?
I think they have their place, not in competitive competition. I believe there absolutely should be a level playing field. when it comes to competition like the Olympics or even UFC, I think they're illegal for a reason, as far as for health for the average person. I have friends that I know that have been bodybuilders and such that have used them, and they explain to me that a lot of them will do it obviously for building ridiculous bulk and muscle mass and everything else, but there's a certain productive use for them in the way of injury repair, because you get things like decagerabulin and growth hormone, and it actually is good for ligament, health and muscle repair and joint health and everything else. The question is it's the misuse and the overuse of them. If you go on a course that's prescribed by a doctor, say a 6-week course, I really don't see any problem with that. I think anything that gives you longevity in the art or field that you are in, that can keep you healthy for longer, is not a bad thing. And why wouldn't you use today's medical expertise in a way that would help you? So that's one aspect. So I'm totally okay with that. The problem, of course, with the abuse and everything is like with bodybuilders, and I've had friends, they get to a certain size, their egos will not even let them consider being anything less than what they are that day. So it means non-stop and continual use and abuse of the amounts of steroids they will inject. A lot of times, in my day, and I know this stuff because I never took them because I never needed to, because I wasn't interested in size. I was a martial artist, but I had a lot of friends in the bodybuilding world that would get stuff from you. They had no idea what they were getting, nor that was almost as it came out of the market. A lot of the top boys would be on it to try and get the competitive edge, but they had no idea of what the long-term effect was going to be. Hence, you saw a lot of bodybuilders blowing their spleens out in their kidneys and all sorts of problems, thyroid glands, et cetera, at the expense of abuse of steroids. So I guess I'm just saying that I understand it. I'm 70 now. I just turned 70 in January, and luckily I'm still in really good health. If I had an issue like I have a bad shoulder, I've got bone on bone, which unfortunately was probably due to the Hong Kong movies of smacking into concrete walls hundreds of times and dropping like a bag of crap onto the floor, onto concrete. I ended up, a doctor told me, stripping all the cartilage off the bone. And I didn't realize I was doing that damage. So my shoulder injury wasn't from bad training as such. It was just from those movies. So I'm suffering a bit from that now. I'm okay with it because I figure if that's the worst I have at this stage of the game after as long as I've been doing it, I'm okay with it. But if somebody came up with something that they could medically prove that was a steroid or whatever, I know there's a lot of stuff with stem cells going on, I would absolutely consider it, providing I knew it was reasonably safe and that the downside of it was minimal compared to the upside in giving me longevity in the arts and making me, or giving me the ability to keep participating for another 20, 30 years if I live that long.
When you used to train, because I know primarily your training was like martial arts, did you incorporate a lot of weight training into your routine, or did you just stick strictly to martial arts training?
No, I am an avid believer in weight training. I started lifting weights when I was 11. And the reason being I was so skinny and small, I had asthma, and all I dreamed about was being big. When I was a teenager, I used to buy the Weeder magazines, and I sort of, as a teenager, got to sort of see people like Arnold and some of these guys, and I would just dream of having that sort of muscle mass and size. I started lifting weights because I needed the strength and size, but it was always as a supplement to my martial arts training, not to get big. And I still say today, if you ask me from a health point of view, if I had to cut out everything except one thing, and that's all I could continue to do, it would literally be progressive resistance weight training. I think it kept my body strong, my ligament muscle staying strong. I know that if I get in and I'm doing a bit of a lunge punch or whatever, or I'm throwing a bow around the place, that the strength and the assistance that weight training has given me to be a better martial artist is second to none. I'm a total believer. People don't realize that weight training is kind of anaerobic. It's also all about fast twitch fiber. I think it's slow, but if you look at these guys that do a deep squat, an Olympic squat or whatever like that, it's all about going from a negative to a positive and exploding through that weight. That's the only way they can complete the lift. Now, the weight won't move fast because it's of a maximal poundage, but the intent is there. And that is so incredibly effective for what we do in martial arts. We're all about going from negative to positive, like chambering a punch. And I know that my speed has always been my number one thing for me as a stand-up fighter, particularly with punching. I've always been known to having, good speed, and I absolutely attribute a lot of that to my weight training. If I'm doing a bench press or whatever, I'll go from a negative to positive and explode into the action. And I just believe that's totally recruited and enhanced my fast twitch fiber, in my body. It's like if I'm doing a kick, to have strong quads, to be able to be in a nice deep sort of stance and throw good, even a front kick involves quad strength, and glute strength if you're doing a back kick. So somebody would have to tell me that not having stronger glutes or quads or whatever, how could that not give you more power, along with the fact that I believe I get faster as a result of my weight training. I know that sounds like an anomaly, but I truly believe that. So yes, 100% believer in progressive resistance training. A lot of the workouts I do, I try and gear to what they need it for. I was doing Hindu squats and stuff, which are without weights, but they focus on my quads. Certain exercises I would do switch lunges with weight because I know switching my stances or being able to be southpaw or orthodox is very important. My shoulder strength is important, so I'll do dumbbell raises with my elbow to the front rather than out to the side, which works a little more in the front delt, because that's the muscle that I believe will help, along with my tries, to delivering a good, powerful punch. Because, you look at I look at a lot of martial arts, and absolutely velocity is a huge part of it. It's not so much about strength, though I would always say that a bigger, stronger person with the same ability is always going to, beat a smaller, less strong person. But, it's just giving that advantage of ways of explosive strength and power is absolutely going to be good for martial arts. As I say, I'll develop certain muscle groups in line with what I think I need that strength and that power for. I don't do the 2 to 3 rep. I haven't changed my routine much since I was a teenager. I still do 10 to 12 reps, 3 sets and 3 to 4 different exercises per body partner split routine. And again, it's just to help me with my martial arts, and I do not feel like the same person on the mat if for whatever reason I have to take a break from lifting.
I'll ask you before I publicly thank you when I'm not recording, or privately thank you when I'm not recording, I'm going to end on a silly question for you. I always ask this to everyone that I interview that does martial arts. How familiar are you with the original Karate Kid?
Very familiar.
In real life, could Mr. Miyagi, who probably only trained this kid on the weekends because he was still in school, could he have trained this kid to win a black belt tournament in a matter of a couple weeks?
No.
Okay.
No.
Everyone says that.
People, no. Unless, no. Not if he's going in a tournament against highly trained specialists in that form of competitive sparring. No. And it's good because every kid wants to think if they're weak and getting bullied and everything, that they could also become somebody that could be a champion in some sort of fighting arena. But no, it's impossible. It's like when people, and I've sort of alluded to with street fighting, people say, but he couldn't beat a really good street fighter. Well, based on what? Yes, a street fighter is used to the street environment, which has no rules. It's from a different range. It's often from what we call the conversation range, Whereas in most karate schools, you step back, you bow, and you step away. That's part of the etiquette.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't prepare you for that range in a normal street fight. But having said that, when you think of the average street fighter, when I hear that, and how much they probably spend most of the time in the pub, that's not to say that some of them mightn't be very much into boxing, but let's leave that aside. But you look at the average martial artist who is dedicated and is a true martial artist, not a part-timer, and the amount of work they put into conditioning, developing an array of skills, punching power, kicking power, hitting things, sparring things, to say that they are no match for the average street fighter is ludicrous. Or, see, that's an example where if I took a martial artist who is very skilled and only used to the dojo, I reckon in 2 weeks I could radically change their ability to survive in a street altercation, merely with a few adjustments. Because the tools are the same, it's just the delivery system and where you deliver it from, and not telegraphing and being preemptive. They're things, they're skills that you could give to an individual in a very short amount of time. But to teach someone like, you know, the dude in Karate Kid in a matter of weeks to go against what we're supposed to believe a seasoned competitive martial artist in that arena, and that sort of arena where it's based on certain skill sets and points and rules and everything, no, I can't even imagine it. You know, a little note, I was up for, it was down to me and, what's his name that played the main baddie?
Martin Cove.
Martin Cove. It was down to me and him for that role.
Oh.
Isn't that funny? You bet you didn't know that.
I did not.
I actually went in and I read 4 or 5 times into the studio for that role. And the director said to me, he said, oh, he said, you have everything I need. He said, I just can't do it. And he said, the reason is I just have to have the character sounding like an American GI. And I still had very much an Aussie accent, which just wouldn't have worked for him and that character. But I thought, later on, I thought, man, what a career changer that would have been if I had got that role. But it was very close.
Oh,
he said, you have all the skills I need for it, but yeah.
Oh, now that's now. I guess with that said, that was because I always ask, you know, a film, you know, from your past. What can you tell us? What are we going to see from you here in the future?
Look, as you alluded to earlier, a lot of my stuff now is behind the camera. Not by choice so much, it's just the way it's gone, because unfortunately, the older you get, I often joke to people that probably the roles I get offered now are somebody's dad or a retired gangster or something, because it's just the nature of the business. They want 30-year-olds, you know, doing the leads in these action films, playing the goodie, and I get that. And it just so happened that because of being in movies and understanding the dramatic side of movies and acting and everything else, that was a skill I could bring to my martial arts ability. So it made me quite a valuable asset behind the camera, training actors, choreographing, and having actors understand the drama within a fight scene, not just the physical technique aspect of it. So that's why I'm doing a lot of that. And I'm happy. I'm still working, and at this stage of the game, to still be doing jobs on films like Suicide Squad, and we're soon to start another Mad Max movie. That's not too shabby. So happy about that. I'm still teaching seminars around the place. I love teaching reality-based seminars. You know, again, what we talked about is how to take your martial arts skills and make it work in the real world, which I understand through 20 years of personal bodyguard work and working doors. And the other side, I might say, is that I still am doing a little bit of acting. I did a lead or a second lead in a film called Rage. Ironically, I've already done a film called Rage, but this is another one. It's a complete drama. There's no martial arts. I don't punch anybody in it. I'm playing a cop. It's a crime thriller. And it'll be out sometime later this year. Who knows when and who knows where, because it could be on Apple, could be on Netflix. You know, it's a different medium now. But that was tremendous fun for me to be in front of the camera doing a dramatic role. And I haven't even seen the end result. We're going to have a screening toward the end of this month, so I can let you know what I think of it. Small budget, but don't care. I just love the experience of it. It actually got me back to what you talked about that it was small budget where everybody was just trying to just get together and make the best film they could with no money. Nothing wrong with that.
No, you are definitely, as a martial artist, you're one of my inspirations. You're one of my heroes. I really feel
Thank
like
you.
a horrible
Appreciate
pile of shit that I can't. I'm too stupid to realize that it's Friday in Australia and not Friday here where I am. I feel awful about that.
I often say that's why we're martial artists and not designing rockets, correct?
Oh, this has been a great honor for me.
Thank you. And look, thanks for spending the time. And it's great to share. I'm at the point of life where anything I can do to give back or inspire other people to realize they can have a career as well. You know, I always say it just gets down to how badly do you want it. You know, again, if a skinny asthmatic kid from a suburb of Melbourne, Australia can get to work with Chuck and Jackie and Samo, then basically anybody can. Again, how badly do you want it? Are you willing to put the work in and believe in yourself? And look, I don't compare myself with anybody in a martial arts sense. I just try and do the best I can with what I have. Because if you compare, you'll be better than some, so you might get a bit of an ego, and you'll be worse than others, and you'll feel a bit down about yourself. So it's about having goals and about having role models and aspiring. It's also about just the battles within. Just be the best you can be, you know, and you're going to have a great journey. And I plan to be doing martial arts, you know, till I'm 90. At this stage of the game, who knows what will fall in my path that stops that. But at this stage, that's my aim because, again, it's just held me in such good stead and it's gave me such an incredible life experience. So I implore any of the young martial artists out there, just believe in yourself, do the work. I always say somebody's got to do those roles. Why not you? It's not going to be easy, but if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it anyway, you know?